in the arts, or in the musical arts?
My father was the solo oboe player for the Philadelphia Orchestra.
Cool.
And then he ran the Curtis Institute of Music. So as a little boy, I grew up in the classical music world at a very high level of the classical music world. I can actually say to you that Leonard Bernstein was downstairs having dinner one night, and you know, and people like that. And I got asked to do a Peer Gynt, to narrate Peer Gynt for the LA Phil, and I did it. And I had always wanted to do narrations, and then I got asked to do it for the New York Philharmonic. But by that time, you know, I also write, and I know how these things work and what have you, and I was always wanting to make these things bigger. So for a period of time, I did all of the major narrations, the Peer Gynt and Bourgeois Gentilhomme and Midsummer Night's Dream and blah, 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 blah. I then got an opportunity when I was in New York, I was finishing Midsummer Night's Dream. A conductor came up to me after the show and said, we'd like you to come to, I'd like you to come to my orchestra, which was in Pasadena, which was really easy, the Pasadena Symphony, and I'd like you to do something. What would you like to do? And I said, Midsummer Night's Dream. And he said, oh, you mean what I just saw? I said, no, no, no. No, the biggest problem is that Midsummer Night's Dream was written by Mendelssohn as incidental music for Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream. What has happened over the years is that the music world takes that and separates it out and plays only the music, and then sometimes will insert somebody like myself, a narrator, to come in and say just a few words, a few of Shakespeare's words throughout the program. Which, and having done Midsummer Night's Dream as an actor twice, I looked at that material and I went, you know, I don't even know what the story is. It's just, I said, I would like to bring them all back together again. So what I ended up doing is an hour-and-a-half Midsummer Night's Dream with orchestra and all of the players from Shakespeare's thing, and used a chorus that became the trees and the woods and the fairies and you know, on and on and on. Yeah. And once that was done and was very successful, I then tackled in Chicago Romeo and Juliet. Romeo and Juliet, you know, you're only interested, quite frankly, I mean, you know, let's be fair. In Romeo and Juliet, we only care about Romeo and Juliet. So I went and I stripped out the parents, and I stripped out, and you only need two things at that point. You need two plot points. You need the killing of Tybalt and the drinking of the poison. So what I did is that I stripped out the show. It was just Romeo and Juliet. I hired 2 actors, 2 singers, and 2 dancers. And then I looked at all of the works that have been done, all of the compositional works, all of the orchestral works that have been done around the idea of Romeo and Juliet. There are 33 of them. And I picked, I think, 12 to then essentially score all of this. So we had, again, an hour-and-a-half show with, and it was really a marvelous show with chorus, and I was able to use Prokofiev and who else? Gounod and Berlioz and what have you. And so I did those for a while, and then I had a series at the LA Phil called First Nights, which were much more didactic, because I had been doing at that time the children's concerts. And I pitched them the notion that they needed children's concerts for adults. The problem is that the music world, as classical music, is essentially collapsing. and they're trying desperately to find a way to be relevant now. And one of the problems is that music education in schools doesn't exist anymore. People don't understand how it works. I mean, to give you an idea, throughout all of the Western world, Europe, America, and what have you, 100 years ago, every town, the little town of whatever, Reno, Nevada, or something like that, would have a little group. And the little group could be made up of a pianist and a couple of people who played the violin and what have you, and they would play some reduction of Beethoven's Fifth. Well, they would play it, they would have an audience because there was nothing else to go to, come and listen, bum, 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 this type of stuff. But then the symphony orchestra would come to town, and the audience would be filled, but it was filled with people who, for the most part, knew that little piano reduction of da, 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 da. So they already had an idea, and then they would hear, 65 musicians on stage and would be, oh my God, isn't this amazing? All of that is gone. So I created a show called First Nights, which had a historical, gave historical context to Mahler's First and Prokofiev, so that people would understand what was the Soviet system and how during Stalin and then Beethoven putting together the Fifth Symphony, when actually it was the first time that trumpets were, or trombones were ever used, and on and on and on and on. So that's how I got more and more involved, and then ended up directing operas. So, sorry, very long-winded.
No, thank you so much.
That's all right. Excellent. Yeah.